Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I want you to just pull up a chair, get comfortable, and let's gather around the campfire of human experience for a bit. Today, we're taking a deeply reflective journey into a story that literally spans continents, decades, and the very depths of the human soul. We're going to be looking at the life of an author who is acting as an older mentor, looking back on his wild youth to understand exactly how we managed to break free from those heavy, inherited expectations placed on us. Now, it's a story about trauma, for sure, but more importantly, it's a roadmap to eventual transcendence.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our mentor shares this really vivid memory of finding an intricate, old Masonic puzzle. He tried to piece it together with a friend, only to quickly realize it was entirely missing pieces. His friend just looked at it and asked, "What's the point of a puzzle you can't solve?" And this wasn't just some frustrating afternoon activity, it actually became a profound metaphor for his whole life. This incomplete puzzle represents all those flawed societal systems, the broken rules, and the totally unfinishable legacies that adults leave behind for youth to deal with. It's like someone thought they were creating this brilliant masterpiece, but they didn't even bother to finish the job.
Now, to truly understand this journey, we've got to rewind a bit to the year 1993. It was a year of profound parallel histories. Over in Hatfield, Indiana, our mentor was born into a world where by the very first grade, he was literally placed under a camera and prescribed heavy amphetamines just to control his behavior. It was a deeply personal trauma driven by a system that desperately needed him to fit into a very specific little box. Well, at that exact same time, halfway across the globe in Kimberley, Australia, this massive systemic reckoning was happening. The Native Title Act was passed, which finally acknowledged the land rights of Indigenous Australians, while also dragging the horrors of the stolen generations into the light. These were children forcibly taken from their families for simply existing in a society that refused to understand them. And while these events are oceans apart, they share this incredibly raw, universal theme: the fight against control and the desperate, profound fight to just be seen.
What we realize here is that this isn't just one person's memoir, not at all. We are all engaged in our own unique battles to break free from the chains that others place on us. Whether your battles are spoken out loud or fought entirely in silence, navigating the intricate, crazy maze of our formative years is a shared collective awakening. We're all striving for something that lifts us way beyond the mundane roles society assigned to us.
Looking back on his past, our mentor uses his childhood neighborhood, this place called Rolling Hills, as the perfect visual for those societal chains. On the surface, Rolling Hills was this total illusion of perfection. I'm talking immaculate lawns, pristine driveways, pure elegance. But underneath that manicured surface, it was a legacy of control and exclusion. It was just full of silent failures dressed up to look like success. And that right there is the burden passed down to youth, this immense pressure to take ownership of broken foundations and incomplete visions that were never, ever built for them in the first place. So the big question we really must ask ourselves, and I want you to genuinely think about this for a second, how do we actually transcend these roles? How on earth do we break out of the script that society and our families have already gone ahead and written for us?
Well, the answer usually begins in the dark. He relates his early struggles to this concept called the dark night of the soul. It's an idea from a 16th century mystic named St. John of the Cross. Basically, it's a period of profound spiritual struggle where your suffering actually becomes a gateway to enlightenment. So those early traumas, those heavy periods of isolation, they weren't just personal crises. They were a necessary crucible. They melted down his spirit so it could be completely reshaped. He actually compares this raw adolescent rebellion to the Kill Bill energy of Uma Thurman's character fighting for her life. It's that unrelenting, sometimes even violent internal drive to reclaim what is yours, to survive the fire, and to fight tooth and nail for your own soul. And this desperate need to keep moving, to keep fighting, was crystallized by the really tragic story of his uncle Reggie. See, at 18, Reggie survived a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. He lived, but he was forever altered, mentally stuck at 15 years old for the rest of his life. Our mentor viewed his uncle as a frozen timekeeper. It's a heartbreaking, living testament to what happens when you remain preserved in time, unable to move past your trauma. So, Reggie became his raw motivation. He knew, looking at his uncle, that there was absolutely no way he could remain stuck. He had to break free. In his search for that freedom, he didn't just turn to your typical college pursuits. No, he turned to ancient wisdom. The words of Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living," became this internal monologue playing on repeat in his head. As an older mentor looking back now, He sees how the Socratic method of relentless questioning was basically a tool for his own destructive creative cycle. He used it to completely tear down all those prescribed notions of his identity, so he could finally build something authentic, straight from the ashes. And this brilliantly illustrates how his search eventually pushed him from Western philosophy right into Eastern mysticism. He encountered the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, whose core method of self-inquiry boils down to one simple, absolutely piercing question: who am I? This wasn't just some fun hypothetical philosophical exercise. It was a visceral, grounding method for peeling back the layers of inherited expectations, the inherited bullshit, as he bluntly calls it, just to locate that divine fire already burning inside him. Now, this spiritual exploration didn't just happen sitting around reading dusty books. It happened out in the real world. In childhood, he and his friends built these wild, imaginative forts in a place called Chuck's Barn, literally defining themselves through play. In adolescence, they threw themselves into extreme BMX stunts down this terrifying hill they called the Devil's Backbone, settling their childhood rivalries and learning real resilience through scraped knees and close calls. And then in college, they lost themselves for hours mastering the moral choices of the video game Fable 2. Listen, these weren't just kids goofing off. These activities were literal portals to spiritual exploration, ways to transcend mundane, everyday reality and touch something infinite. Which leads us to a really fascinating threshold. What actually lies beneath all our constraints once we finally manage to break free? Once you tear down all those illusions, what are you really left with? You're left with flow, capital F. He discovered this psychological state, this incredible zone where time completely dissolves and you are entirely 100% present. But he didn't find it in a stuffy university lecture hall. He found it viscerally, during those late-night Fable 2 gaming sessions at an apartment they called Fairfax Gardens, and out on the field founding the university lacrosse team with his buddy Dylan. He realized that finding flow absolutely requires creation, and it actually follows a pattern. It starts when he challenged the boundaries of physical reality, kind of like when he and his friends were swinging glowing Socratic lightsabers around in their apartment, just bending reality to their imagination. Then it evolves into moving together as a single organism, which was perfectly demonstrated by that unspoken, synchronized teamwork racing down the lacrosse field. And through this incredible connection, you tap into a divine, creative force that is entirely present in that specific moment. It's a language of creation that goes way, way beyond words. Okay, but let's be real. Spiritual journeys aren't always entirely serious. Sometimes they are utterly absurd. Our mentor fondly recalls Chuck's Barn, where all that imaginative childhood stuff began, and he reflects on this totally Monty Python-style scenario. Just imagine an older man hosting barnside chats, pontificating from a book called The Blockchain Bible of Virtues, while a goat wearing a glowing collar casually wanders through the frame. Ha! Capra est dominus. The goat is master. This delightful, totally surreal humor serves as a perfect reflection of humanity's overarching quest, desperately searching for deep cosmic meaning right smack in the middle of absolute chaos. Looking back on this entire crucible of his youth, our mentor crystallizes his lessons for us. Just like those branching paths of good and evil in the game Fable 2, he learned that every single action ripples outward to shape your legacy. He realized that true success is never, ever measured by the castles you own or the power you gain, but by the lives you touch and the fierce loyalty you show your friends. He learned that forgiveness, even forgiving the systems and people who controlled you, is absolutely required to finally exit the dark night of the soul. And above all else, he learned that you don't need to go seeking the divine externally. That fire already burns right inside you. So, the crucial point is this. If we recognize that fire within us, how do we finally, permanently let go of the pain and those heavy, suffocating expectations we've inherited from the generations before us? Well, the answer lies in the concept of Tyaga. Tyaga is this incredibly powerful Sanskrit term that represents the profound act of sacrifice and letting go. But here is the ultimate realization. This act of letting go isn't actually a loss at all. Giving up your inherited baggage, your past trauma, the societal rules that never quite fit you, that isn't losing anything real. It is simply the shedding of illusions, just like the false perfection of those rolling hills lawns, and it creates the necessary, beautiful space for something far greater than the self to finally emerge. And this brings us to maybe the most empowering realization in this entire explainer. Our mentor boldly declares the things we inherit aren't sacred. It's up to us to decide whether to polish them, fix them, or break them down. We do not have to accept the broken systems of the past. We are not obligated to clean up the messes left by previous generations just because they dressed them up to look like success. We have the power, and honestly the absolute right, to completely dismantle them.
Which leaves us right back where we started today, looking at that incomplete Masonic puzzle. The question I want to leave you with, my fellow travelers, is this. Will you just blindly polish the broken puzzle you inherited from society, or will you break it down, tap into your own flow, and build something authentically yours? The choice of what you create next is entirely up to you.